Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome here to the Irish Hills of Michigan as it plays host to tonight's race for the G-Force Hijinx Clothing Vintage Cup Series. We're getting set for 63 laps of racing. These drivers have had an off week. They raced the Watkins Glen International a couple of weeks ago, and we're back with our coverage here on FRN. Seth Cole alongside of Anthony McCrory, and Anthony, the thing we've heard here tonight is we're not going to see these guys as snappy loose as we're used to. However, the tighter setup is going to kind of present a more difficult challenge for these guys.
These guys have gone a whole season racing with the cars on edge, and now they're going to have to readjust their driving style to that of a bit more of a modern car. They're going to try to go into these turns with a bit more speed than they think that they can carry, and then all of a sudden it won't pull anywhere to the left. So it's going to be fun to watch them have to cope with the new handling of these cars, but it's also going to be kind of scary to see them go into turn one, knowing that this is going to be the first time they're all together on track with the new set. It's going to be a hectic turn one, to say the least.
Shane Terrian is the pole sitter for tonight's event alongside of Hank Steinmiller. Steinmiller, of course, the winner a couple of weeks ago when we last covered this series at Daytona. More recently, we had the Watkins Glen race where Christopher Morse Jr. went to victory lane, and he's looking to cut into the points lead established by John Whitendorf. Whitendorf is not in the field again here tonight, so a big opportunity for Morse Jr. to be able to pounce as he's looking for his second championship in back-to-back seasons. But here we go. Shane Terrian and Hank Steinmiller bring us down, and we are ready to go racing here at Michigan. 63 laps of racing on tap for these 18 drivers here tonight. No 3 wide just yet. Now they're almost looking 3 wide around the 6th position. Double wide at the front of the field, and look at this. Outside line prevails off of turn 2. Steinmiller will go to the point down the back straightaway.
Steinmiller had a whale of a run going down the back straightaway. Now it's gotten cleared of Therian. Therian's going to try and slide in behind. Gets right to the back end. Now to the inside. Behind them goes John Cooper on Jake Houndshell. Slides up the track. Almost gets some contact, but going down the front straightaway. Battle for the lead now. Therian all the way down the apron. They're both down in the apron. A good run by Shane going down the front straightaway. Dead even going into turn 1. Who gets the advantage?
Terrian was so low on the front stretch, I think his left sides might have been clipping that infield grass, but he completes the pass before they get to the center of the corner. He'll go back to the front. Terrian was the fastest in practice, started on the pole for this race, and we got trouble in the back. That is Jarrett Jones in the 0-4 out of shape. He was slamming the wall off of turn 2, saw a lot of smoke off that right rear quarter panel. He keeps it straight, however, and we stay under the green flag.
He got a good save going down to the apron. Ended up getting it snapped to the right, back in front of the, make that the 16 of Andrew Ewing back here, slotting into 13th place. But that's a product of these drivers having to figure out how to deal with the new handling of these cars a lot tighter than they used to be. So we used to see them trying to correct the back end of the car. Now they've got a lot of understeer going around these turns. A bit of a shock for the drivers that have really had to deal with it all season long. They've been used to driving one style. Now they have to readjust for the new style. But so far, so good, as everybody kind of singles out, except for the battle for second, which is turning into a 3-car battle between Steinmiller, Jake Houndshell, and a possible points leader, Christopher Morse Jr.
Morse Jr. at Watkins Glen picked up his 2nd win on the season, and now looking to see if he can get what would be a league tying 3rd win on the year. The only driver that had 3 wins coming into tonight was Ryan Lutz in the 36. Morse Jr. continuing to try and get that outside line going there to get at least third position from Jay Counshell and then maybe challenge Steinmiller for second place. It's kind of the trifecta of ouch for these drivers here tonight in terms of the conditions they have to deal with. You already touched on the fact that these cars with the setup, they're going to be tight coming off of the corner. Throw into that as well how aerodynamic this track is, so you're running in dirty air. That's going to give you that aero tightness off the corner. And also, take a look at our weather here this evening. Ambient temperature, beautiful out here, a sunny 76, but out there on the track, it is a hot and slick triple-digit 114 degrees.
Absolutely baking is the track surface right now, and those are not going to be good for the tires. So tire conservation at this level of track, it's a fast track, one of the fastest that we're going to be at all season long. Whoa, there was some contact, it looked like, between, I believe that was Jay Counshell and Christopher Morse Jr. that has now gotten to third place. But given the track conditions, this being one of the fastest tracks on the circuit, those tires, specifically the right front, is going to be screaming at the end of this because, again, they have to push into the turns now. I feel like the tires are going to be the one thing that these drivers are going to have to come down and pit for before they have to pit for fuel. It's a short race, this one. One of the shorter races that we're having on the season, although here at Michigan, we're still running pretty considerable lap times. The last time by, the leader, Therian, got a 43.2, so not exactly slow lap times that we're running here, or not exactly fast lap times either, but at the same time, it's one of the tracks that you're basically on the throttle from start to finish.
Had a car way up the track there in 3 and 4. I think that was the 29 of Kevin Dinovich. He had to give way positions to Seth Harrelson and the 12 that we're looking at here of Chad Wilson. A couple of drivers in the field here tonight that they may have run back at Watkins Glen, but it's our first time seeing them here on the FRN broadcast. Highest run of them, Marshall Strong in that 40 machine, right now up in the 9th position. Also Jarrett Jones, who we saw have that great save off of turn 2, and Chad Wilson there in the 12. Drew Ewing back there in the 16 machine. So nice to see some new names popping in here. And, we're into the second half of the season now, Anthony, and this is usually in a lot of leagues where we'll see new drivers test the waters and see if this is a place they might want to run full time in the next season.
Indeed so. We've got a battle for the lead going on right now. Therian's been caught up by Morse Jr. to the inside, goes to 3. Made that look pretty easily. Pretty easy done, does the 3. I was almost wondering if Therian on the start of the race didn't have a lot of momentum going. He had a lot of momentum on the start, but it seems like the outside line just doesn't work anymore, as now Therian, the crossover down the front straightaway alongside of Morse Jr. into turn 1, still side by side, but on the outside line, Morse isn't giving up. He might keep the momentum going through 1 and 2, which begs the question, is 1 and 2 better on the high side than 3 and 4?
And I'm almost wondering, to your point about it seeming like all of a sudden the top line has lost the advantage that we saw it have in the just first couple of laps of this race. I'm wondering if that's in part to the tightness of the setup. And we saw it mostly on corner exit, but I almost wonder if it's just as prevalent on corner entry, because if you enter in low, you then use a groove and a half for your car to drift up. But if you enter into the corner high and you drift up that groove and a half, you're probably going to find yourself into the wall, if not by the center of the corner, then definitely on corner exit.
And the fact that turns 1 and 2, something that I have noticed, and I don't know why I didn't think of it, there's contact between the 2 leaders! And they save it, but for the moment, it looks like that now Steinmiller might have a go at it. Does he take it 3 wide? You bet he does. 3 wide for the lead, going down the back straightaway into turn 3. Can they hold it? This contact again between Therian and Morse. Therian gets a little loose. Morse saves it. There's still 3 wide battling coming out of turn 4.
And now Jay Counshell taking a look at this. What will he do? Morse around the top's going to clear for the position. I would have said that's a shorter way around the racetrack for Steinmiller. Probably would have gotten him to the front, but it could be the case he had to feather the throttle a lot more than those drivers in the middle and outside line. And Therian's not going away. He is going to continue to battle with that 3. Runs about a half groove lower there through 1 and 2, trying to pull back to the bumper of that GM Goodwrench Chevy.
If this had been the old setup, I would imagine that we would have seen a couple of wrecked race cars, given the fact that they were so hard to handle. But now with the new one, you can bump each other through these turns and get away with it. As we saw Therian and Morse basically leaning on each other for more than a couple of turns, but still Morse to prevail. He's out in front. Therian second. Jay Counshell has continued to run a very consistent third place. As brother Jason not too far behind in 5th place. And check out who's coming up through the field. Cooper Johnson. And remember, we keep talking about Cooper Johnson, how he seems like he always starts at the back and then we all of a sudden find him in the top 5. Well, he didn't start too well tonight. Ends up now battling for 5th place. He's got Mitchell Blanton right behind him, or Michael Blanton, make that right behind him. But Cooper Johnson, our Daytona winner, might mount another charge. He's looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, and Cooper Johnson's a driver that we kind of can't rest on as well. Talked about the fact that Morse Jr. is trying to maybe take over the points lead after tonight, heading into next week from John Whitendorf. But coming to this evening as well, Cooper Johnson was only 13 points behind Morse Jr. And so running up here now into the top 5 as he completes the pass on Jason Hounshell. Keep an eye on that 14 car because he could have thoughts about possibly either taking the points lead or being in very close proximity with Morse Jr. when they get to next week's race.
We're talking about our first-time drivers that we're seeing tonight on FRN. We got one back there that Seth mentioned earlier, Marshall Strong, running in the 9th place position in a battle right now with Randy Koking. Both of these drivers, make that Robert Kenny is battling. So 2 drivers that we haven't seen so far tonight. And Strong now goes to the inside to take 8th place. So for his first start that we're seeing, doing really well is the number 40 team.
And a clear for the position on that Tabasco number 34 of Robert Kenny is Marshall Strong. So he continues to march his way up through the top 10. That 10th position's got a good battle going on. About 3 drivers in the mix there. Seth Harlson in the 07, Chad Wilson in the 12, and new paint scheme there, the John Deere number 11 of Randy Koking, right now in the 12th spot. That's Jarrett Jones just behind them as well in 13th place. We got a couple of guys that have kind of fallen off of the pace here, have lost touch with this lead group. James Goshen in the 85 with some new colors. He's back here in 14th. Justin Mons, that's another driver that actually we have not seen on broadcast here on FRN in this series yet. He's running in 15th place, trying to hold off James Roth in the 4. We're used to seeing James Roth up towards the front. Roth actually had that streak at the beginning of the season to finish up inside the top 10. Early struggles, it seems, for the new colors on that number 4 machine as well.
And back here you also have Andrew Ewing running around in the 17th position. And all the way at the back of the pack in 18th, you've got Kevin Dinovich, which I'm not really sure if there's some damage on that race car or not, but he's the most off the pace out of everybody. The last time I ran a 47.1. So whatever's struggling with that car is definitely detrimental to his pace right now, as it doesn't look like he's able to turn the car in very well. He might be one of those drivers really struggling with how the handling is at the moment, but it's going to be one of those learning curves where these drivers, they've gone all season driving a certain way, and now they basically have to relearn the car. And as you can see, tracks up way high on the racetrack, so not particularly used to how the new machines are handling at the moment, but still soldiering on. Up at the front, it's still a 3-way battle for the lead. Oh, there is the yellow.
Justin Mons in the 18 has gone around over in 1 and 2. So first time tonight that we'll see the yellow flag wave here at Michigan. Actually, correction, it's the 18 on our telemetry. It's the 41 out there on the racetrack, Justin Mons. Let's go back and see what happened, because as we mentioned, the fact that the setup here tonight is awfully tight. There's really only 2 ways these drivers could more than likely spin their race cars out here, and that's either getting up into the outside wall on corner exit or making contact with another car, which is what I believe he did here.
Yeah, I think that what happened is that the 4 of Roth, I don't know if he was just misjudging the entry into the corner or if Mons was misjudging where Roth was on the racetrack. It looked like a racing deal. The slightest touch. They came together, but it was enough to send the 41 around. Only a quarter spin, though. It's enough to warrant a yellow flag. Did not loop the whole thing around, though. So good save on the part of Mons, but we are under our first yellow of the night as a result of it.
Riding on board here with the 4 of James Roth. You're going to see Justin Mons there on the left side. There he is, entering into the picture. And yeah, just the sled, just a bit of contact there to the right rear sends him around, but he managed to keep the thing from going up into the wall. Pretty much no harm, no foul for either one of those drivers. They'll be able to continue on, and 16 laps into this stint, oh no, we're going to see people on pit road? Well, there's the answer. Race leader Christopher Morris makes that left-hand turn. He's bringing a number of drivers down with him. However, Like we got a couple of strategic drivers there as well that are going to elect to stay out under this yellow flag. Hank Steinmiller amongst them.
Yeah, Steinmiller has elected to stay out on racetrack, will inherit the lead of the race. James Roth, the guy who was involved in that last one, is also staying out on track as I think Morse might have overshot his
Oh,
pit box. Oh,
we
goodness.
got a wreck towards the back there. That was, I believe, the 16 of Andrew Ewing and the 85 of James Goshen getting together.
So drama at the back of the pack. He's Ewing's made it to his pit stall, now getting service on his machine. Somebody got out extremely quick, and that would be Michael Blanton. I believe he might have taken a 2-tire strategy. There's no way that he was able to get out that quickly on a 4-tire. Shane Durian, though, gets out very quickly as well, as he's jumped ahead of Morse, and so too is Jake Hounshaw. So both of them with a jump over our former race leader, Morse. I believe that was due to the part that Morse overshot his pit stall, so has to work his way back towards the front of the field from his position now, which, if all cycles around, should be 6. So not exactly a not detrimental, but definitely if that was under green, that would have been a lot more positions than what it was.
The 4 of James Roth, I think we'll see him on pit road this time since he, I believe, claimed responsibility for the incident. He would come down pit road the second time, thus dropping himself to the rear of the field. Hank Steinmiller, let's kind of set up the. Oh, well, hold on.
Well, Blanton's
Lance's
coming
going to
back
come
down.
back down pit road.
Did
So this is
he?
interesting. Well, he was in his pit stall. He did a 2-tire pit stop, as you alluded to. I'm wondering if he thought maybe some other drivers would do it, and now that he realizes that everybody behind him took 4, he's coming down to equal out the playing field again, but it's going to cost him, though.
Definitely going to cost him. He's going to fall all the way down to at least 16th, if not further down. Would imagine he'd come out somewhere in 17th, given the fact that, well, maybe Roth is going to beat him off pit roads, but Roth is going to have to EOL anyway. So, extended stop. Never mind, he's gotten left sides. Now, this has been a slow stop, though, for Michael Blanton. It's not exactly what a normal 4-tire stop would be. Now he's down and away. I don't know what the call is here. He had 2 tires. I would have imagined that he would have lost less positions if he had just stayed out on the racetrack. He had the track position. He had a pretty fast car up until this point. I don't know what the call was here. Maybe he got caught speeding down pit road, although he wouldn't be able to take service if he was a penalty.
Well, whatever the case is, it's going to drop him all the way back to 17th for this restart. A driver that stayed out and didn't look back is Hank Steinmiller. He's going to be the one to lead us back to green. He chooses the top side against the fresh tires of Shane Terrian. Jake Hounshell and Christopher Morse Jr., they'll be in row 2. Marshall Strong and Jason Hounshell in row 3. And this is going to be interesting with the timing of this caution here, too, because we kind of had a suspicion that these drivers would split this race in half, probably come down and make only one pit stop during the course of this race around the lap 30, maybe lap 32 mark. Now with this caution coming out, this will move the window back of when they would probably have to make their final pit stop of the day, and it opens up the window for drivers to be able to play with some strategy here too. They could wait as soon as the window opens, or they could wait as long as they possibly can until that fuel tank runs dry.
Plenty of options for the race engineers to figure out throughout the course of this one. Hank Steinmiller didn't wait around at the green flag. He did the exact same thing that Shane Durian did at the beginning of the race. He now has gotten out to a pretty sizable gap back to the 38. Although, we'll have to see if the two...
Got a car on the wall. Robert Kenny is going to collect up the 16 of Ewing. Caution will undoubtedly fly, and it does.
That, I believe, was a byproduct of getting too tied up on the track, and I think it was only the 2 of them involved. Ewing and Kenny are the only 2 that I see with damage. Everyone else able to avoid.
Saw the whole front end of the nose around the grill area coming off of the 16 of Ewing. That car smoking as he limps it back towards pit road. There is Robert Kenny in the 34. He was the first car I saw out of shape. I think he's the one that got the outside wall off of turn 2 that initiated the contact for our second caution of the day. Let's go back to turn 2, see what happened. I'm not certain. I think there was a possible 3-wide situation around this area. I don't know if these drivers were in the middle of that or not.
What happened here? I think this actually starts with the 02. Or make that the 07 of Seth Harlson. I think that he ran a little bit wide on the track, and Robert Kenny just happened to be in that same vicinity and then just got the wall and then was shaking violently down the back straightaway, trying to catch the car up. But unfortunately, he ran into Ewing before he was able to save it. And look at the heads up driving on the part of some of those guys right behind him, though.
We're going to be taking it on board with a couple of them, most notably the 85 of James Goshen. As you'll see right here, there goes the 16 across the track and right across the nose of his Chevrolet. So a couple of drivers there with a heart-stopping moment down this back straightaway, a number of them utilizing all of that runoff down there towards the inside wall to be able to avoid both of those drivers.
Yeah, you're not ever meant to see the side of a race car during a during a race, especially out the front windshield of your car. So, man, that was good, fantastic on the part of Goshen. But what was strange to me was that Robert Kenny's car, the way that it handled going down the back straightaway, it seemed like he wasn't able to ever get it going. It almost like he had the speed wobbles going down the track, but he almost did save it. But I almost wonder if Ewing hadn't been in that situation or hadn't been there, that he would have saved it. But unfortunate news for Andrew Ewing. He has retired from the race officially, and Robert Kenny still sit on pit road, not doing much better. There are no fast repairs except for the super speedways, and this does not technically count as a super speedway, although some people might want to debate that statement. But we are still pacing around. So Seth, with the one driver going out and one driver still on pit road, does it kind of make an incentive for these drivers to maybe think about how their car is having some understeer on these restarts and maybe try to alleviate some of that pressure by backing off some going through turn 2? Because it seems like that's where we've had a couple of incidences happen where turn 2 on the corner exit, it seems like everyone tracks up the race or tracks up the track and hits the outside wall. Or I know you can't say go easy to a race car driver, but do you think maybe a little bit of caution on the initial restart might be a strategy play here if you want to have some longevity in your race?
Well, I think it's certainly prudent based on what you were saying with the fact that there's no fast repair to be able to fall back on. I mean, if that car is wrecked in any way, shape, or form, you talked about how people want to argue that this is a super speedway. Well, in many ways, if your car is damaged and off the pace, it cannot stay in the draft, and basically you've thrown a chance at a victory out the window. So you've got to keep that car in one piece, and you've got to keep it relatively clean so that way it is aerodynamically sound. The only issue, too, to kind of counter the question you had there, though, is we talked about at the top of the program, 63 laps. It's not a very long race. So if you're somebody back there on this restart around 7th through the 17th position, you're wanting to make the passes now while everybody is clumped up together, because if we go into a long green flag run, the field is going to get spread out. So you want to take advantage of picking up those spots here and now. And with that being said, that means you have to go hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Given the fact that the last green flag run we had, everyone did get spread out. To your point, everyone does want to make that move as quickly as they can. And again, the length of the race does come into play. This is the shortest race that they've had all season. Definitely going to be a factor in how drivers will handle the racetrack. One note: Hank Steinmiller is no longer the leader. He is restarting his 17th after going down pit road to get service onto his race car. He'll be restarting a long ways back from the lead, but we're getting them slotted up again. Therian on the inside line gets a good restart, a rocket away, already cleared by a couple of car lanes going down to the start-finish straight, and make that Christopher Morse Jr. having to battle with Marshall Strong, now in the third position, but battling Jake Houndshell. There was almost some contact. Do they make contact coming off a corner exit?
Let's see if they do. They were definitely close. I think they did exchange a little bit of paint there to the center of 1 and 2, but everybody makes it off of turn 2 and down the back straightaway cleanly for the moment. It got stacked up there on that restart around the 4th row. I think it was the 11 of Randy Koking didn't get going, but everybody's been able to get themselves slotted for the time being. We got some good battles for 2nd, a battle for 4th, 3 wide back there for the 6th position. That's Chad Wilson, high, wide, and handsome, with Koking in the middle and Justin Mons down on the bottom. That's Justin Mons that brought the first caution of the day, by the way.
And he's going the right direction. To the inside, gets both of them, and now up into 6th place. You wouldn't know that he had spun around earlier in the race, and thankfully, because all it was a half spin, there's no damage on that race car. He could run at full tilt just like everybody else. Or on the inside, though, extreme inside with Seth Harrelson all the way down on the apron, now sails it into turn 3. Can he get the run out of 4? He's definitely going to pull alongside of the 41. Does he have the momentum, or does the draft on the outside line give Mons the momentum? At the line, Mons with the position, but still battling side by side, and up in front of them, there's still more side by side battling as the leaders aren't too far ahead.
Jake Hounshell took a try at the race lead on the inside of Shane Tyrion, couldn't make it work. They're stacked up from 3rd place on back. Now actually the battle's for 2nd. Morse Jr. getting to the left rear quarter panel of Jake Hounshell. They're still 2 wide, 2 rows deep back there with Harrelson, Mons, Blanton, and Chad Wilson. There's battling all through this field right now.
It's continuing to mound up back there around the 6th position. Harrelson now up in front, but now Michael Blanton showing his face back into the mix as he now takes 7th place on the inside of Mons, who is trying to figure out how to get to the inside line, because it seems like that's where his car is the best right now. Oh, there was some contact. Looks like Blanton didn't quite get into the turn as well as he'd like to, and now he's made contact, and now that sends Mons back down to 9th place at the moment. Randy Koking saying, well, I'll take that position if I need to. Now slots back in line, but that could have been disastrous for the 41.
We almost had contact for 2nd place around the same time that there was near contact for 7th. Between Christopher Morse Jr. and Jake Hounshell up here at the front. They have now settled out their battle as well. Now, we don't know what the fuel window is for these guys, but I want to take note of a bit of strategy that took place under that last caution and is playing out as we speak. You talked about Hank Steinmiller coming down pit lane. Well, he came down pit road twice. He came down to put on the 4 fresh tires, and then he and his teammate Cooper Johnson came down the 2nd time caution. We'll touch on that in a moment because Randy Koken has gone around out of turn 2. Yellow flag will fly for the 3rd time here today.
And that was a long slide that he took. It started in turn 1 and has ended up in turn 2. He's gotten it going back the right direction. I almost want to imagine that was something that similar that happened to Mond earlier, but it seems like he's the only one that was involved in that one. So good on the part of everyone behind to stay away from it, because there was certainly a lot of cars coming with a lot of momentum.
Go back and look. I believe that the 85 of James Goshen had just been on pit lane. I think he might have gotten the wall off of turn 2 on the last restart lap, because I saw him running awfully low off the 2nd corner. So I think he might have come down to get a little bit of damage repaired, but he fortunately with this caution will stay on the lead lap. And while we go back and take a look at this incident with Randy Koken, I just want to quickly touch again, if we had stayed under green flag conditions, the strategy that was playing out from Cooper Johnson and Hank Steinmiller, because they came down the 2nd lap of caution, they topped off the fuel tank, and neither one of them there on that run looked any too anxious to work their way up to the front. So if we had stayed under green, we might have had ourselves a fuel strategy race. Now with this caution coming around the halfway point, everybody might be able to make it to the checkered flag on what they've got in the tank.
Timely caution coming out for those drivers who were going to be short on fuel. This happened. We mentioned Mond earlier as he was involved in the first incident of the day, and he's the reason for the second one, or make that the third one of the day, because he's the one that misjudged it going into turn 1 this time and ends up running over the 11 going through into turn 2. Almost had them both saved, but then got connected and almost got rid up onto the 41. That hasn't worked out too well, has it, for the 41 crew?
It has not. He is more than likely going to have to get some damage repaired, I would think, at least, especially around the hood, as the 11 was up on the left side of his hood. But no, he has not come to pit lane. We're looking at just a handful of drivers that elected to come down pit road, including Shane Tyrion, Robert Kenny, Hank Steinmiller, Cooper Johnson, Jarrett Jones, Robert Kenny, and James Goshen. These drivers put about 8 or 9 green flag laps on their tires here, but about 10 of them decide to stay out under this caution. So this is interesting.
This is interesting. I wonder what the long game for these guys are. I know that they were trying. They can make it to the end of the race. Most of the drivers that came down pit road can make it to the end of the race now, but the ones that didn't, what would the strategy be here?
Well, the question I have is with the pacing laps here, if they were just a few, maybe a lap, lap and a half short, could they save that here under pacing and don't want to give up the track position? We also don't know. There's also a limit on tires. And so maybe trying to save a set for later on in this race. But this is going to be fun because it's the first time we're going to see about half the field on different tires to the second half of the field. And guys like Shane Tyrion and Robert Kenny will have to see what a difference 10 to 12 laps makes in terms of tire rubber grip and how fast they'll be able to work their way through the field up to the front.
Because it certainly seemed that the little bit of time that we ran, Hank Steinmiller, when he only had 2 tires, or actually make that he had no tires, he actually was pretty up to pace with everybody. We never got to see what Michael Blanton can do, given the fact that he came back down to pit road before we got to see him on the 2-tire strategy. So, but for somebody that didn't change tires, it seems like it works out pretty well, at least on the short run, and we only got about a half a lap worth of data to work off of, so a lot of it is speculation. However, on the initial start, he certainly did have some speed and was able to actually keep the gap back to Theory, and so I would imagine that there is some pace, but these drivers up the front, they are the ones that didn't pit. There is those drivers that started the pit lane back there. Shane Tyrion in the 11th position is the first driver that came down pit road, and you have Kenny Johnson, Steinmiller back here, Jared Jones, Goshen, and Randy Koking. Those drivers are 12th on back. The leader, Jake Houndshell, who has yet this season to win an event. He might be looking to change that tonight. He's had a fast car. This could be the night for the O2.
So far this season, mentioned no wins. He does have a pole position, 4 top 5s, 11 top 10s. That is tied with, I believe it was Cooper Johnson for most on the season. And an average finish of 8.5, but that win has eluded him. Maybe we'll see him get here tonight, and he's actually going to lead his brother Jason Houndshell to the front. Those two had it timed pretty well, but now it's brother versus brother going into the first corner.
The Houndshells battling for the lead of the race. Jake over Jason, and at the minute, Jake's got the advantage on the outside line, and it always seems to be on the restart where the outside line gets the momentum, and then it kind of starts carrying off as the run goes on. But for the time being, right now, the inside is the preferred through 3 and 4, and now chugging along the inside line goes Jason Houndshell to the point, the 00, bringing the 3 with him down the front straightaway. He was not wasting any time, 3 wide for the lead.
Or was open, enough room for at least a car, and so Morse Jr. says, thank you very much. I'll fill in that real estate. They'll continue to take a 3 wide into turn 1. Morse is going to clear them both. He'll turn up in front of the 00 and lead them through 1 and 2. Jason Houndshell not done. He looks back to the inside. Jake looks to the inside of Jason, so everybody taking some peeks out of turn 2 here. And look at this. Super Speedway 2-car tandem in down the back straightaway for the Houndshells.
The O2 pushing the 00 down the back straightaway, and now to the inside goes Jason on the 3 of Morse. Now, this is crucial because Morse is right now battling for a championship lead. We mentioned that Cooper Johnson came into this race only 13 points behind. Right now, Johnson runs 13th, so the game for Morse right now is to stay out in front. You don't necessarily need to win tonight in order to keep the points lead or even take the points lead, because the points leader isn't in this race. So I almost guarantee a points lead, but long game, take the points lead. Short game! Don't do that! As Seth Harrelson finds the inside wall.
Hard hit for the 07. It was off the racing surface. Will it bring out a caution is the question. I don't know if it will or not. If it does come out, it will be thrown by admin call. Almost contact there for second place, as that's Harrelson's race over. Ooh, little contact again there between Jake and Christopher Morrison. The thing of it is here, too, You talk about that points lead battle potentially between Morse Jr. and Cooper's Johnson. Johnson's got 10 lap fresher tires and he's got more fuel in the tank than Morse Jr. So the question is, what type of strategy was Morse Jr. playing when he decided not to come pit road? Is he good to make it on fuel now, or is he planning on seeing another caution between now and the checkered flag?
Given what we just saw a moment ago, it could have been another caution, so that's certainly not off the table as far as possibilities and strategies, but at the moment, he's not doing much of any saving. If his goal was to save fuel and conserve his stuff for the end of the race, he hasn't been able to do that, as the two hound shells have really taken it to him. And look at this. Pushing down the front straightaway now is Morse onto Jason Houndshell. There's contact almost between Jake Houndshell and Morse, but through turn 1 and 2 still, it's contact free for the moment. Now Jake Houndshell on brother Jason for the lead, and they keep swapping the lead as if we were at a restrictor plate track. These cars are not on restrictor plate. It's just that the setup is so similar to each other. They have to rely on draft. No one's been able to really take the lead and then get away from anyone behind them. Speaking of people behind them, look at who's in fourth. The 40 of Strong coming up through the field. He's now on the inside of Jason for third place.
Yeah, incredible run here tonight for Marshall Strong in his G-Force Hijinx Clothing Vintage Cup Series debut. He's looking back, trying to hold off the 24 of Michael Blanton, who got around Chad Wilson for 5th place a couple of laps ago. Chad Wilson, another debuting driver, having a solid outing here tonight at Michigan International. And right now, it's Jake Houndshell showing the way. Morse Jr. in second. Battle's going to be for third. Marshall Strong, big run down the back straightaway, and he's going to easily clear before we even get into turn 3 for that third position.
And that's going to bring Michael Blanton along with him to the inside of the 00. And now Chad Wilson also coming into the mix. Does he think about the inside? Not quite. Going to think about it possibly for another attempt at the lead of the race. It's Jake Houndshell with a content lead, and I say content with extreme air quotes, is that he's got a big mess of cars behind him trying to vie for that first place position. You've got the top 6 all within the same camera shot, and now you might also have the top 7, because Shane Tyrion's coming up through the field mighty quick, as he's got fresh tires, full tank of gas. He doesn't have the prohibitions that everyone else has, so he's going to have to use that to his advantage. James Roth, we were talking about James Roth, about how all of a sudden he finds himself in the top 10. He's running in 8th, and he's brought Robert Kenny with him. So these two have had some interesting nights thus far, but have cracked back into the top 10. Hank Steinmiller is also running in 10th. So good recovery drive after coming down pit road twice earlier in the race.
Battle for the lead now as Morse Jr. dives to the inside of Jake Houndshell. I don't think he'll have the momentum off the corner. Tried to pull up to the left rear quarter, could not get there, so Jake will hold the spot down the back straightaway. Now, Marshall Strong takes advantage of the 3 having to lift off of 2. He'll look for the second spot into 3, but one thing I'm a little bit worried about here is contact. Morse Jr. is going to hit the outside wall. He tried to save it, couldn't do it. He keeps it going straight, so I don't think a caution is going to come out for that. That's a tough break for the guy that was looking to leave here tonight and head into the Battle of Bristol as the points leader. And, well, this changes the point I was going to make, because I was going to say I'm a little bit worried for Shane Tyrion in the fact that he was mired back around the 6th position. I didn't know how many laps it would take for those new tires to wear down and even out with the competition around him, but he never lifted when all that took place. He jumped up 4 spots from 4th now to 2nd in a matter of a couple of corners.
And he is a prime contender for the lead of the race. And now this is the one example that we'll see tonight where the leader has a big gap. Jake Houndshell, because of all the drama happening behind him, has now opened up a 1.6 second gap back to second place, and it is growing. So whatever he's got to do whatever he had to do to get a big lead has been done, and he can pull away, as the closest competition right now is in a battle for second place between himself and Chad Wilson, who now finds himself in second place. Marshall Strong still in 4th, and top 5 rounded out by Michael Blanton. What drama we have late in the race, as the potential points leader going into the next round is now going to be Cooper Johnson, if everything goes his way tonight. Right now running in 10th place, prime position to take the points lead with the woes of Christopher Morse Jr.
Still ways to go, though. This is a 2-mile track, and we've still got 24 circuits before we see, actually make that 23 circuits, as Jake just hit the line, before we see that checkered flag. Michael Blanton just moved into the 5th position. Robert Kenny under fire from Jason Hounshell. And we'll see if they're able to keep it together off this corner. That's why I was wondering, because it looked like that 34 was running awfully high off of 2. He is going to brush the wall. Also saw Justin Mons a little out of shape back there in turn 2. So, while Christopher Morse Jr. right now is running with that right side damage back in the 14th position, I wouldn't tell him to lose hope just yet, because there's a lot of hairy situations from 2nd place back to around the 10th position.
There's a lot of time left in the race to make some moves as well. So whenever you got to do, just keep the car out on the racetrack, and you might be gifted with a little bit more than you were asking for. Right now, single filed out throughout most of the field as everyone kind of backing off, trying to find their slot in line for the remainder of the race. Save for Jason Hounshell, who has now been passed by James Roth, who's going the right direction, now finds himself in 6th place. He's another driver looking for his first win of the season in that 4 machine. He's gotten consistent top 10s. His streak was broken a few weeks ago when he fell outside the top 10 for the first race since the beginning of the season, but now has found his way into another top 10 and almost a top 5, as I think that Blanton might have gotten a piece of the wall coming out of make that 4. A big closing rate difference between the 4 and the 24 going down the front straightaway, and now the inside, Roth is not wasting any time, wants to take the 5th place position.
If Blanton didn't hit the wall, he got awfully close, and he had to lift a ton. And as you mentioned, James Roth, with that momentum, able to take advantage. We had a good battle back here between Robert Kenny, Justin Mons, and James Goshen in the mix of this one. Robert Kenny also there as well. They're all battling around the 8th position at this current point in time, and I've been watching the telemetry between Jake Hounshell, and Shane Terrien. Now, Terrien, Chad Wilson, Marshall Strong, they are running single file in a 3-car pack. If we went by normal super speedway ruling, then that group of 3 would be reeling this 0-2 in very quickly. But based off of the setup here and the track conditions, it's been a very slow, painstaking process for them. The last couple of laps, they've been able to close up, but only by maybe 8/10, maybe a full second. They're gaining all the speed on the straightaways. They're losing a little bit of time in the corners. So it's going to take them a couple laps to get up here to the 0-2. They are trending in the right direction, but it's not like you would normally expect at a super speedway where that 0-2 would be a sitting duck.
That is their current rate at the minute. They would have to significantly up the pace right now, and it's actually grown quite a bit that last time by, because Shane Terrien got wicked loose coming out of turn 4, and they've lost about 3/10 now back to the leader. Jake Hounshell has now opened up to almost 1.8. He's actually increasing his lead even further. So as these guys start battling, the gap up to Hounshell increases. Is up to 2 seconds now. So these guys, they need to work together if they want to catch Jake Hounshell. At the moment, a lot of these drivers, not only are they battling and scrubbing off speed, but they're also in dirty air for the guys behind whoever's in front. So at the moment, Terrien and Strong would have the worst chance of turning into the next turn. But Chad Wilson, all he's got to do is hit his marks, and he might be able to make something of it. But again, you mentioned it, the straightaways. That's where they're gaining all this time. The only problem with that is there's only 2 of them, and considering how big the gap is and the lap times they're running, they're not going fast enough through the turns in order to make the straightaway speed worth it.
Prepare yourself possibly for some late race drama, because when they come around here to put 17 laps to go on the board, that's 34 miles. Bear in mind that usually when we look at the fuel window, we look at 2 different numbers. We look at how far they can go when they're in draft, and we look at how far they can go when they're not in draft, because obviously that's going to consume a lot more fuel during the course of the run. You look at Jake Hounshell out here, yes, he's got a commanding 2+ second lead, but he hasn't been to pit road since all the way back on lap 17. Shane Terrian, on the other hand, he was last on pit road back on lap 29, so he'd be able to go a little bit further than Jake Hounshell would. And while we don't really know what the fuel window is for these guys, you have to wonder, with it all spread out here, if guys like Shane Terrian, who's the only guy up inside the top 5 who was on pit road back on lap 29, guys also like Cooper Johnson, Hank Steinmiller, Robert Kenny, if they're planning this thing going green flag to the finish, and all these other guys up here inside the top 10 might be gasping for fumes by the time we get to 5 to go, maybe even down even closer to the checkered flag.
I don't know if we can use him as an example, but he did just come off of pit road, and that's Christopher Morse Jr. Not sure if he came down pit road because he needed fuel or if he needed his damage to be repaired. I almost think it's the latter more than the former, as he had quite the bit of damage on his 3 machine, but he's back on track, only 1 lap down. So if anything, if that's an indication, because they were on the same pit strategy, that would mean that none of these guys could make it that stayed out. But again, we can't really use that as a unit of measurement, given the fact that he had a lot more damage and probably came down for different reasons. What I can say, though, is that these guys that are in the draft right now, Wilson, Strong, Roth, Johnson now, Cooper Johnson's one of those drivers that doesn't have to worry about it. He came down pit road along with everyone else that back a few laps ago. We'll make that more than a few laps ago. So he's good to go. So it could come down between himself and Therian if everything goes green, like you mentioned. But these guys that are saving fuel, they could save enough to make it to the end of the race if, and only if, they do it now, or they have been doing it for the last 5 laps. It might be close, but if they start backing off a little bit, then they might be able to do it. The problem is that they can't back off. It's so close right now. You don't have the option to back off and save some fuel because you need to battle with the guys next to you, especially with Therian, because he doesn't have to have that level of fuel saving, as there was almost some contact between Wilson and Roth. That could have ended. That could have been the caution that saved some of these drivers, ironically. Although Cooper Johnson might bring it out. Look at this, 3 wide with Steinmiller in tow.
Johnson and Steinmiller, they've been running nose to tail. I think they've been working together to try and save a little bit of fuel here. And with that move 3 wide, I think they've now decided it's time to go. That all culminated, that all stacked up into that situation with Chad Wilson getting the wall off of 4 a couple of laps ago, and then James Roth getting the momentum to get alongside of him. They stalled each other out, and that allowed drivers like Cooper Johnson and Hank Steinmiller to reel them in. It's now 2 by 2 here for 4th place on back through 7th. Now Roth runs really high. This is going to be sketchy off of 2. Ooh, he cut that thing really hard to the left to make sure he didn't hit the wall and almost took out Chad Wilson.
I have no idea how they were able to not make contact that time. They went 3 wide for a brief moment, and it looked like for sure that somebody was going to hit the wall, but they managed to keep it together. So good piece of heads-up driving for all of them. Now this dynamic duo right here between Johnson and Steinmiller, they're doing exactly what the guys in front of them should have been doing, is working together to catch up to the guys in front. At the moment, Jake Hounshell with his lead, it's almost uncatchable at the moment. With the amount of laps left, can you believe we're coming down to 10 laps to go in a couple laps time? The race is closing in. It's go time. If you need to save fuel on the part of Hounshell, he can. He has the ability to save some fuel. Therian doesn't have to. Marshall Strong might be another one of those drivers that is in a situation where he has to save some fuel, but now Cooper Johnson and Steinmiller coming up. If they catch Therian, they need to start working together in order to catch Jake Hounshell. The problem is, at this stage, there's not enough time.
The question also is, Jake Hounshell out there in clean air, no draft around him whatsoever. We're not really seeing his pace back off in terms of trying to save fuel. It's backing off in terms of the fact he's out there on old tires. Can he make it back to the start-finish line? If you run out of fuel here at Michigan, it is a painstakingly slow process of making it back to the start-finish line, and we've already talked here tonight about momentum. If that car starts losing speed, you got a good chance if that thing starts running out of fuel over in turn 1, you're not even making it back to the start-finish line.
We might have a bit of bad news for those leaders, or that leader then, because Goshen's come down pit road, as too has Jason Hounshow. Remember, these guys were on similar strategies. They're getting 4 tire stops and fuel. I would be worried now if I was Jake Hounshow or Marshall Strong. That is not good news that you wanted to have come across your radio.
And this is coming with 10 laps to go. Drivers like Tyrion Johnson and Steinmiller, they all pitted 12 laps after everyone else. So if these guys can't make it on fuel, the drivers I just mentioned, they should be able to make it to the checkered flag. So it might be Tyrion, Johnson, and Steinmiller to settle it out for this victory if we stay under the green flag for these final 10 circuits. Man, there's going to be some contact. That's Marshall Strong cutting across the nose of Hank Steinmiller. He's going to come back up towards the racetrack, straightens it out, however. Oh, no, he's going to spin around. Oh, are they going to throw the caution or not? That's the big question.
Oh, he's kept it off the wall, though.
To come back up onto the racing surface because he cannot get to pit road. Pit road is separated by a wall in the infield grass. Oncoming traffic there with James Goshen. Looks like we stay under green. Nobody else was involved. That's the caution that Jake Hounshow wanted to see, however. That's definitely not the yellow flag that Tyrion and company wanted to see.
Absolutely not. That would have been a nail in the coffin for the guys behind, and Hounshow would have been able to ride around under pacing, but now he's got to conserve fuel. That had to be the slowest sequence of spins that I've ever seen as
Right?
he went all the way down the front straightaway, but did keep it off the racing surface and never hit the inside wall, so good driving on his part and able to keep that car going in somewhat of the right direction, but now it falls under Jake Hounshow. All eyes are on him, and you better believe that his spotter is telling him, you got to save fuel. You have to do it. The race engineer, everyone's cheering him on. Does he back off? He is backing off through the turns now. He's got a 3-second lead, however. This is more than enough time to work with. I think now he can back off quite a bit and make it to the end. I don't know how he was able to accumulate that 3 seconds, however. That it had to have been due part to the earlier spin we just saw, but still, back to Tyrion, it's a long mountain to climb.
James Goshen, Jason Hounshow, you mentioned on pit road. James Roth has now ducked onto pit lane. He was on pit road 40 laps ago, much like race leader Jake Hounshow. So if Jake's got a miracle in that fuel tank, then we might be about to see it. We'll see if he can make it another 6 circuits here with about 2.6 seconds back to Shane Tyrion. Cooper Johnson and Hank Steinmiller, we talked about them working together. They are reeling in the 38. So if the 0-2 cannot make it on fuel, you're looking right now potentially at the 3-way battle for the victory. Johnson with a win at Daytona at the beginning of the season. Steinmiller with a win at Daytona a couple weeks ago, and Shane Tyrion still chasing his first win in the Cup Series, a former winner in the Grand National Series, but yet to lift a Cup Series trophy. Maybe it'll take place here tonight in a coast-to-coast at Michigan.
And a little bit more weight on Cooper Johnson's part with the hardships that Christopher Morse Jr. has had. If he continues on the track he will inherit the points lead at the end of this race. He only came in 13 points behind Morse. And now, with like I said, with the hardships, he's in the catbird seat. He's got plenty of opportunity now to not only, what we talked about his win earlier in the season at Daytona. We always, people said it was a fluke. Given the circumstances, he didn't win the race. He essentially won the lottery with the race. Now, some of that might be true. However, his consistency after the race, you can say whatever you want to about Daytona, but week in and week out, he's been consistently in the top 10, in the top 5. He is, at this moment, if he gets the points lead, he earned it. There's no way around it. This man has earned the points lead if he can take it tonight.
Cooper Johnson was leading that duo for a good portion of this run. He's just now given up second place to Hank Steinmiller. I think this was an exchange that was of mutual benefit. Now he gets to run the draft and save a little bit of fuel. Steinmiller, who's been saving fuel most of this run, now he's going to go out there and cut the draft, try and see if they can get up there to Shane Tyrion. Michael Blanton in the 24, he couldn't make it on fuel. He ducked onto pit road, so it's all the question of just how much further can Jake Hounshow go, about about half was backstretched there, you see, between him and Shane Tyrion. What was 3 seconds has now been cut completely in half. 1.5 seconds between the top two.
The lap times have fallen off quite a bit for Hijinx, and you have to imagine that panic mode is certainly setting in for the O2. Everyone else about that had that same strategy has come down pit road at this point in time, save for maybe Robert Kenny. I don't think he came down pit road that last time by. I'm checking my thing. Actually, yes, he was the one that he was one that came down pit road. Chad Wilson, however, didn't, and he's running in 6th place at the minute. So if anything, if that's the gauge, then Chad Wilson hasn't pitted yet. Neither is Justin Mons. They might be a benchmark as well for Hijinx as they're still running on the racetrack. The gap now 1 second. Can he get around 2 more times without losing the lead of the race? Now becomes the question. We were talking about it. Can he make it on fuel? Now can he make it on fuel and not lose the lead?
I'm not necessarily certain if that's going to be the case. I think that if he can make it on fuel, he's not going to be able to hold off Tyrion, Steinmiller, Johnson, because I don't think they're in fuel conservation mode at all. He might be able to hold off Robert Kenny and finish in the 4th position. So I think right now all he's trying to do, make sure he makes it back to the checkered flag with a top 5. Don't give up all of that track position with having to come to pit lane, but I don't see how he's going to be able to hold off guys like the 38, the 63, and the 14, because Tyrion, he's now caught into the slipstream of the 0-2. He's less than half a second back. White flag's going to be out this time, though, so this is going to be a very interesting 2 miles. Does Hijinx punch the throttle here and try and keep the momentum on the final lap? Hank Steinmiller out of shape back there off of 4. He keeps it together. 1 more lap around Michigan.
It's hammer time now. If you're Jake Hijinx, you gotta go, and you gotta go now. He's got Tyrion right behind him. Does he have a little bit left in order to make this charge? The answer might be no. He throws the block. Tries to keep in front, but I don't think that there's anything left in the car. He's weaving, trying to get fuel into the car. That's called splittering. They've made contact. The 2 leaders have made contact. Hijinx around. Tyrion's off the racetrack, but gathers it back up. He might win this race now, if not by the save he made going down the back straightaway.
And he is going to keep it together off of 4. Shane Tyrion with late race dramatics. He'll go coast to coast. He's going to win here tonight at Michigan in a thriller in the Irish Hills. Steinmiller 2nd, Cooper Johnson in 3rd. Jake Hijinx after the wreck on the back straightaway. He might not even make it back around to finish inside the top 5. As a matter of fact, he just got passed for 5th place. We'll see where he crosses. Where's the 11 of Randy Koking, who right now is in 7th. Hijinx's going to lose that spot. He'll finish 7th place here tonight, but holy cow, what a finish here at Michigan International.
He's run out of fuel, hasn't he? Going on the back straightaway. I think that's why he was weaving off of turn 2. He was trying to keep the momentum going, but I don't think he had anything left, and so a last-ditch effort. Maybe if he was to get a little bit of bump off of Shane Tyrion, he would have been able to keep the lead of the race. It's heartbreaker for the 0-0 team. He was on track for his first win of the season. Was not to be, but somebody who does punch his way to his first ever win in this level of competition for G-Force is going to be Shane Tyrion. He finally gets one done here at Michigan as he burns it down for the fans. That you couldn't have scripted a race finish like that.
3 things worked into Shane Tyrion's favor there on that final lap. Number 1, the contact between himself and Jake Hijinx, he didn't spin it around. Number 2, as you alluded to, he gathered it back up after that really shallow entry into turn 3. And number 3 was the fact that the 0-2 spun back up the racetrack. It caused Cooper Johnson and Hank Steinmiller to have to kind of guess where he was going to be. They had to back off a little bit to make sure they didn't run into him going into the 3rd corner. That lost them the momentum they needed and allowed Shane Tyrion to hold them off, because Shane Tyrion, even though he still kept that thing going, he lost a ton of momentum into 3 with how low he entered into the corner.
Indeed, he did. He almost bended also in the inside wall. I don't know if you saw, but he went right down on the edge of it, almost side slapping it in. But again, a fantastic save coming off the front, or to make that the back straightaway up into turn 3. Also kind of used the apron to his advantage. Had this been Michigan without the paved back end, we might have seen a very different outcome tonight. He could have spun it very well, could have gotten to the inside wall, but again, heads up driving on Tyrion's part. Hank Steinmiller, who had that off strategy at the beginning of the race, stayed out, then came back into pit road. Had a very extended stop there, came down twice, and under safety cars was able to actually make his way back into position. Never lost a lap and finds his way to second place. Cooper Johnson, again, third place. And officially now your points leader, Cooper Johnson, heading into next week's race at Bristol. So a bit of a relief on his part, knowing that it's come this far, but a lot of work still to be done as we still got a long season to go.
Morse Jr. was able to mount a comeback after coming to pit lane. Several drivers that couldn't make it on fuel, he picked up some spots on them. He will finish out tonight's event in the 11th position, but as you alluded to, the fact that he finishes outside of the top 10 and Cooper Johnson finishes in third, remember, it's the old Cup Series point system, so it's going to be a lot more points gained from position to position rather than just the 1 point with the current Cup point system. So yeah, Cooper Johnson, no doubt, if they didn't bypass John Whitendorf for the points lead, he will be ahead of Christopher Morse Jr. He would be at least in second, if not the points lead, heading into Bristol next week. A couple of guys that made their first starts of the season with solid outings here as well. Chad Johnson was the driver that was able to make it on fuel and finish the highest of those that were really, really close, finishing in fifth. A good run for some other guys here, like Randy Koking there in sixth. Justin Mons, who was involved in a couple of wrecks here tonight, a couple of contact wrecks. He's going to finish in eighth. Jarrett Jones in his debut there in ninth. And then from James Roth on down, these are the drivers who could not make it back to the checkered flag without coming to pit lane at the end of this race. Most of them are around the 10 laps to go mark.
Yeah, it came down close. I honestly didn't expect that Houndshell was able to stay out that long on the fuel he had, especially because you had those drivers that did come down pit road late or earlier on in the race, and they were on the same pit strategy. People like Goshen, people like Jason Houndshell, Dinovich, Marshall Strong. He was on pit road for a different reason, but those drivers that came down early couldn't make it. Now, someone that did make it, and I was surprised also that he was able to make it, Chad Wilson in fifth place. He was also on that strategy of Houndshell, and he was able to stretch it all the way and make it into fifth place. He might have been doing some extra saving, and he might have ran out of fuel at the line, but still good showing for him. Randy Koking also gets a sixth place out of it, and Jake Houndshell gets seventh. Mons, after a spin and a spinning, saves into eighth place, and then Jarrett Jones, his first start, ninth place. James Roth, the streak's back. He's in 10th.
And going back to your point there about Chad Wilson, he was also dealing with some right side damage that he had sustained. He had brushed the wall off of turn 4. Back, I believe, was around lap 50, 51. So that would have obviously hurt his pace a little bit, but was able to overcome all of that to salvage a top 5 here tonight in his Cup Series debut. Let's see if we can talk with some of our top 3 finishers here this evening, and let's kick things off with the guy that was second coming off turn 4, scraped the wall and lost the second spot to his teammate, still brings it home with a podium run and potentially could be taking the points lead now into Bristol next week. That's Cooper Johnson. Cooper, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I sure do.
Wow, what a thrilling finish here tonight at Michigan. You got a front row seat with it, but obviously, I said this, and you can obviously confirm it or deny it here to let us know. It looked like you weren't certain where that 0-2 was going to end up in turn 3. So how much were you still in the throttle, and how much were you lifting, just trying to figure out where the clear lane was going to be going into that corner?
Oh, I had no idea. I kept, because I saw him go down low, and then I saw him come back up, and I didn't know if he was going to try and hole in the wall, and then he come back down again, and it's really disappointing because, you know, me and Hank just literally the lap before had gotten into the wall coming out of 4, and we kind of felt like if we were a little bit closer, we could have had a shot to possibly take it from Shane, but it was craziness. We had no idea what was going to happen there. We knew Jake had stayed out a lot longer than us, and there was no way he was going to make it on fuel, and we knew he was going to have to do something drastic to try and stop Shane. But if I'm going to be honest, I did not expect him to turn down and try and get into him like that. But it was crazy. That's for sure.
It kind of took us all aback when we saw him turn into Shane Tyrion and almost wreck everyone going down the back, or make that the back straight away. But I did save it. Now, what I want to know is that how do the cars feel tonight? Obviously, the handling has been updated for these cars. Now they are a bit more understeery than they were previously. How has it had to gone through the race, having to adjust your driving style to the new setups, knowing that you used to be able to chuck these cars through a turn and have to fight it, and now they feel a bit more planted?
It played into how I race pretty well because I like to kind of lay back at the beginning of the race and kind of just save my tires as much as I can and get a run towards the end and kind of just be faster towards the end of a run versus the beginning of the run. And for me, it played in fine because this thing was so tight. I mean, you had to brake so hard and so early getting in the corners, and the tires. I had my right front tire was down to 6% there at the end of that race. So that tells you how tight the things were and how much you really had to get on the brake and how much you really had to turn. I mean, we were lucky to make it to the end of the race for how tight these things were, and tires were valuable. And I know that's why the strategy for us was just to save a tire at the end in case we did get a late race caution. And man, they were a handful. That's for damn sure. It went from having to try and fight it and saw at the wheel from it being loose to now just having to try and really back off and try and feather it through the corner.
You talk about the value of the tire. We know that one thing you didn't have to worry about was fuel. You and a bunch of drivers came down pit road back on lap 29. It was the last time that we saw a caution for the remainder of this race. So it kind of looked like you guys were in the thought process of if this thing goes green, at least we're going to be able to make it on what we've got in the tank. But you talk about the possibility of a late race caution. We had a couple of candidates. We had the 07 spinning off on the back straightaway. We had the 40 in the grass in the front straightaway. So what part of you was saying, yes, I want a caution to get fresh tires, but what part of you was saying, no, keep this thing green because I can make it to the start-finish line when we take the checkered flag. I don't have to come to pit road again.
Well, after a certain point, I mean, you kind of wanted it to go to the end for us just because we were starting to pick off, towards the end of that run, we were starting to pick off guys just, slowly and surely. Me and Hank were he was almost like pushing me past people. He was like pushing me going into the corner and trying to force me by people and kind of almost a two-car tandem going down the front and the back stretch to kind of pass these guys. And it worked great. I mean, we were really picking them off. And then once we kind of started to get within a second of Shane is when we really started to fall off and the tires really started to fall off. And I mean, at that point, you're kind of, like you said, you're kind of hoping that maybe a late race caution come out, and obviously everyone had to come down for tires, but, you're almost kind of hoping that, I wasn't sure, if Shane was going to make it on fuel as well, because I wasn't sure if he had pit on that last one, and you're almost just kind of hoping that both of those guys out in front of you run out of fuel, and, it was a lot of fun there at the end, and I think I probably would have preferred the way it ended, because that was a great finish.
One final question for you here, Cooper. Now, unofficially, based off of our mathematics here, with the three struggling here tonight, you finishing up beside the podium, you're going to be carrying the points lead once again now into Bristol next week. So, you've been very consistent this year. You had the points lead for the first couple of races after your Daytona win. You've kept yourself up in the top 5, and now you're back at the top of the standings. And what a time to do it heading down the home stretch.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, once we kind of lost the lead, I kind of struggled after a couple of races after Daytona, and kind of the rush of emotions kind of carried into the next couple of weeks as we kind of struggled. But just I've gotten my feet under me again. I'm getting used to these cars a lot more, and we're just running consistent. And that's the biggest key is, with this point system, it's just about consistency, finishing the top 5 every single week as much as you can, just continues to get points and allow guys like Chris to make mistakes. He gotten caught up in a wreck earlier in the race, which cost him a ton of spots, and he's had a lot of that happen this year, and that's kind of been just the strategy. Let them make the mistakes, let them, screw up, and just for us stay consistent, because that's, it fits my driving style really well. It's just the way I run. I just run consistent, and I'm not trying to make any dumb moves, trying to throw it in there and take myself out of the race. So hopefully this consistency continues forward, and Bristol next week will be definitely interesting, to say the least, especially in these cars and how tight these things are now. It'll be interesting.
Definitely will be interesting to see. Well, Cooper Johnson brings it home P3 here tonight in the MDYS 125 at Michigan. Congratulations on yet another good run, Cooper, and now we're going to give you the opportunity to do some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
I obviously want to thank team owner Hank Steinmiller. He was the big reason why I was able to make up all those spots there towards the end of that race and pushing me a ton. Great guy, great teammate. Love hanging out with him in the off times. And thanks to Juicebox Podcast for sponsoring the entire team and myself. Love those guys. They have a great podcast. If you ever have time, go check them out. They're a fun bunch of guys. And thank you guys, as always. You guys put on a great broadcast every single week, and look forward to talking to you guys some more for the rest of the season.
Well, that's Cooper Johnson, third place here tonight in the Irish Hills, and unofficially going to be taking the points lead into Bristol next week. Congratulations, Cooper, and best of luck.
Thanks, boys.
Well, he talked about his teammate Hank Steinmiller. Steinmiller's going to bring it home in the second position here tonight, and we're going to talk with him now. Hey, Hank, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you.
All right, so first off, I got to ask you, just based off something we heard with your teammate moments ago, the two of you were two-car tandem and trying to work your way up there to the 38. How do you do that here at Michigan? We knew the setup was going to be tight. We knew the speeds going into the corner were going to be slower. This is a speedway / super speedway, people call it, at Michigan, but it doesn't necessarily follow all the fundamentals of super speedway racing in terms of drafting. So how difficult was it to keep those bumpers locked up and get the speed you guys were able to?
Takes a lot of trust. It wasn't too difficult. The big thing you got to do is entering the corner. The guy behind, if you enter that corner a little slower and back that corner up, you can get the run off to really push the guy in front of you. So that's kind of how that tandem was working. But it also allows that guy behind to save a little bit more tire. We were looking at the tires at the end of the race. I had a bit more tire than Cooper, and I had been behind him for most of that run. So it is a tandem work there, and it's fun to do that. It's a little bit different than Daytona or Talladega where you're just wide open, but it has a lot more throttle control with it, and you can really make things work, kind of box some people in and get the run off.
So having to go from the back of the pack to the front of the pack must not have been an easy task to do. You did have fresh tires as opposed to most of the field up front, but how was working getting back from the, I think it was far down as 16th at one point in this race, having to get back up to then battle for a potential lead late in the race? What was your mindset going through those laps where you're trying to weave your way through the pack?
Well, that first caution, I didn't pit, and I was going to pull a different strategy. I just wanted to do something different than the front two that didn't make me have to race them to win. It wasn't that I didn't want to. I just wanted to try find an easier way to beat them. But that quick caution right after that, because that first caution knew everyone had to pit again. So whether I stayed out on tires or didn't, it would save me an extra set for late. But that second caution, I thought, started to put them in the window of being able to stay out on fuel. And I think it was only a lap we made, so I pit for the tires then. I didn't want to get stuck sitting out there as the only one that had to make a green flag pit stop, and that's what put me back there. So at that point, no one did come down, and I expected them to top off, so I knew they were still going to be close. And when I looked at it a little bit later, I was thinking, or doing the calculation, and there was no way they were going to make it. Jake was going to have to save 2 or 3 laps, I think, and you guys saw, I think it was last week or last race when Chris was trying to save all that gas at Watkins Glen, it just wasn't going to work. So I knew him being out there by himself, if he was in the draft, he might have been able to do it better, because there were points where I was only running half throttle, quarter throttle at certain points just to stay behind Cooper, whoever I was pushing to get past people. So it was a strategy call. I wasn't too worried about it. I knew how the tires wore out, and I feel like I saved tires just as good as most anyone here. So I was just waiting for the tires to run out on other cars and try to make the easy pass on them.
Now, Hank, one thing that we got to touch on here, we were talking coming tonight about the fact that Whitendorf wasn't in the field. Morse, Johnson tonight could capitalize on taking the points, but you're right there as well. 4th in the standings, only 100 points back from Whitendorf coming to tonight's race, and only 11 points behind your teammate Johnson, who you finished 1 position of ahead here tonight. We talked about the old Cup point system, so this puts you right up there as well into the mix heading to Bristol to be battling for that points lead. And there's only 9 races left in the season, so we're heading down the home stretch, and we talked about a couple of weeks ago, you had that win at Daytona. You've got the second place finish here tonight. The momentum's definitely on your side. So what are we looking for in the next coming weeks here? Do we see the 63 back in victory lane? Is it just all about consistency down this home stretch? Because it's looking like you're definitely putting yourself in that title picture as well.
First, I wanted to get the win because I think you guys know how many times last year I came up second, and maybe a couple times this year. I think the last 2 races I've been second, but I did have that win, so it's kind of tempered me down a bit. Now it's about being consistent. So I think in the last 3 races, but I think it went win second. I might have been missing one in there, but we're starting to get the consistency. The first portion of that season was not good for our car, at least. I mean, it ran into everything we could have. Everything that was on track, I think we hit, even the pace car. So might have hit an official on pit road. I'm not sure, but we're coming down to the end, and we need to be consistent, me and Cooper. So we're gonna work as much as we can together. But as you guys see, I think we were bumping to the checker flag there. So we'll race each other hard, but we'll also work together and see if we can't put ourselves in a position to take home the trophy at the end of it, the team trophy or the driver's trophy. And next week, you said Bristol?
Yes, indeed. Yep.
I got some unfinished business with that one from last year with Gerald. I think I won that race. I don't think the officials made the right call on that caution late.
Well, we're going to be looking forward to seeing if you can get that Bristol revenge. They call it the last great Coliseum, so we may see a battle there. But great run for you here tonight. Runner-up, Hank, congratulations. We're now going to give the opportunity to thank some sponsors and do some shout-outs.
Yeah, thank you guys putting on these broadcasts. They're awesome to watch back. Chris and his partners there for putting on the league, and I want to thank my partners, Juicebox Pod, and they partnered up with Cloud 8, so check those guys out. And thanks to Cooper also for being a part of the team, and we're really starting to put things together now.
Hank Steinmiller, he has had really good finishes in the last couple of weeks. 3 finishes up inside the top 2 going back to his win this season at Daytona. We'll see if he can carry that over into Bristol next week. Best of luck, Hank. Congrats on a great run here tonight.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you later.
And let's go down to victory lane. First time he is a Cup Series winner under the G-Force banner, Shane Terrian. Hey, Shane, Anthony, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you.
Well, man, we know that you've been trying for the last couple of weeks to not only be a Grand National Series champion under G-Force's banner, but also a Cup Series winner. You get it done here tonight, coast to coast at Michigan. But, man, a little bit of a heart-stopping moment there on the back straightaway. How did you keep that thing underneath you and point it straight going into 3?
I don't know, honestly. If he would have doored me a little bit lower, like a little bit more behind my door, I was no saving that. But I just kept my foot in it and kept it straight. So, I mean, I don't blame him for hitting me. He was out of gas. He had to do something, but it worked out. It was a little scary, but I deserved it. I did turn him at Daytona, so I expected it.
Yeah, it was a bit of a hard-stopping final lap coming off of turn 2 for us in the booth, and I can imagine for you down driving the car it was even worse. But through the entire race, it just seemed like it was a slow burn up to the final 5 laps. You had come down pit road. I imagine that you were comfortably secure with your fuel saving. The other 2 guys, not so much. But what were the tires like? Because the talk of the town is that the tires didn't really handle very well under stress.
Well, I didn't get to check my tires at the end of the race, but I heard from Hank and the 14 there that the 14 had like a 6% tire on the right front, and Hank's was 12. So I assume mine's probably around there. I don't know, but after that first run, my tire was down 30% after that first caution. So yeah, they were tight, but the only way you can get them to turn with them that tight is because these things have so much power in the back is you just got to hammer on it. Just all you got to do. Just get it to drift a tiny bit. But yeah, the tires were not good. I heard people blowing tires, and it got me a little scared. And then when I realized I couldn't catch Jake, I was like, all right, I'm just going to slow it down. I can't catch him. And then I forgot that he didn't pit. So I was like, okay, he might not make it.
We were trying to crunch the numbers too to see if that 0-2 was going to be able to make it back to the checkered flag. We knew you guys, you, the 14, the 63 had all been to pit road about 10 or 12 laps after they had, so we knew you guys were good to make it on fuel. But a thing that we were following there in the closing stages was the fact that you were running potentially in the race lead if the 0-2 couldn't make it, but you had nobody around you, no opportunity for draft. The 63 and the 14, they were 2-car tandem, and they were starting to eat into the interval between you and them. So how much were you keeping an eye on them in the rearview mirror, seeing how close they were getting, and maybe formulating a plan if they got to your back bumper? Because more than likely that was going to be the race win battle coming down to the checkered flag.
Yeah, I mean, I pay attention to it a little bit because when I just gave up because I figured Jake, he was pulling from me, so he must have known he could make it in my eyes. So I just slowed it down and I didn't really push the right front. So I think when they would have gotten to me, I would have had still would have had a better turning car, and I don't think they would have been able to get me. That's what I think. So I don't know. I mean, I think me slowing it down a little bit helped them because they were only gaining me. If I looked, they only gained like maybe three tenths, I think, when I basically gave up. I'm not sure. I don't know if it counts because they were battling, but they weren't catching me as quick as I expected. So I'm not entirely sure, but I was keeping an eye on it. And then when Robert Kennedy was watching the broadcast, he was like, Jake pitted has a 12 lap difference in pit stops. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, he didn't pit. And I looked at my fuel and it had 11 laps left of fuel with like 6 to go. I was like, this man's gonna run out. He's not gonna make it. And then I just started pushing it again.
Well, Shane, first off, congratulations on a great save there on the back straightaway, and then congratulations on picking up the victory here tonight, coast to coast, pole to win the Irish Hills of Michigan. We're now going to turn the microphone over to you, let you thank some sponsors, do some shout-outs there in Victory Lane.
Yeah, I'm gonna thank Evil Controllers. I'm gonna thank the league. This was a fun race. I don't think I've adored so many people like either on action or racing wise. That was a blast. Usually a lot of people get angry at that, but that was great. Just beating and banging. It was fun. And thank you guys for broadcasting. I'm gonna go rewatch it. I usually have it on, but my phone was basically dead, so I didn't. So I'm gonna go back and rewatch it. I want to rewatch the contact with me and Chris for the lead because I thought for sure one of us was gonna die there, but we didn't. And then yeah, thanks to Chris having me. It was fun.
Shane Tyrion's going to pick up his first G-Force Vintage Clothing Cup Series victory here tonight in the MDYS 125 at Michigan. Congratulations on a great race overall, a great run, and a great victory there, Shane. Go and enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you.
And thus concludes our coverage here tonight at Michigan International. 3 early cautions there, Anthony. A couple of caution scares in the second half of this race, but we did not see the yellow flag after we saw the last one back on lap 27. And it came down to fuel strategy. It came down to who had what in the tank. We almost ended up having a deja vu from Daytona where a guy running outside of the top 2 almost won this race when we had that contact between Houndshell and Terrian down the back straightaway.
I'm surprised that that was one of the moves that he decided to make was trying to get into the side of him. I guess a desperate times call for desperate measures, but that was definitely a desperate measure. It did pay off a little bit. He did get 7th, did Houndshell. But yeah, Tyrion keeping it straight after what could have been race-ending contact for the two of them and getting this win. That's good heads up driving on the part of the 38 team, and you got to think that they're kind of stoked at the end of this one. Hank Steinmiller, again, battling through the back of the pack up to the front. So too did Cooper Johnson. So they had some pretty whale of a drive as well. Tyrion was able to do it on a strategy. And let's get some shout out to some of these drivers that came into the top 5 and even the top 10 that we didn't expect to see in the top 5 or the top 10. Robert Kenny gets a 4th place. Chad Wilson in a 5th place. Both those drivers were on the same strategy that Houndshell was, and they ended up getting a little bit better of a finish than Houndshell did. Randy Koking, too, ended up finishing 6th place. And then on back, got Mons, who was, again, involved in a couple crashes. Jones finishes in 9th, and James Roth in 10th. That's a pretty solid top 10. And some drivers that you wouldn't expect to finish outside the top 10 finish outside the top 10 after their early woes.
A couple of hardships and a couple of comeback kids, if you will, in the top 10 and outside of the top 10 here this evening. It's interesting, too, because we talked with our race winner, Shane Tier, and he says, I don't think I've run a race where I've bounced off so many cars. We saw it visibly. So much contact being exchanged with drivers sliding up the track, trying to take positions from the drivers to their outside. We're heading next week to the world's fastest half mile, a night race at Bristol, aptly named the Battle of Bristol. We know there's going to be sheet metal exchange there.
Absolutely. Every time we go to Bristol, it's a bit of a demo derby rather than a race. But with these cars with the new setup, it's going to be hard for these drivers to handle the new setup. Because remember, when we were there earlier this season, it was more or less easier for them to get around the track. They were able to be a lot freer. They could really throw the car in. But now, even at Michigan, where you'd expect to be full throttle for pretty much the entire lap, maybe a little bit of a let off of the throttle, they had to get on the brakes and get on them pretty hard, according to Cooper Johnson. So, if we get to Bristol and those same rules apply, we could be seeing a bit of a tire battle more than we're going to be seeing a battle on the racetrack. A man versus machine versus the racetrack versus each other. It'll be one whale of a fight, that's for sure.
We're going to have to wait and see what the last great Coliseum has in store for us. That's going to be taking place next Tuesday night. Green flag scheduled to fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But here this evening at Michigan, it's Shane Thierry, and he captured the pole. He captures his first win in the G-Force Hijinx Clothing Vintage Cup Series, and he does it in quite an interesting fashion, a heart-stopping fashion, a very exciting fashion for the fans on the very final lap. A pass on the back straightaway and a save into turn 3. Anthony, it's been a really good one here tonight at Michigan. Maybe a finish we weren't expecting, but certainly one worth sticking around for. Appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Absolutely. This season has been full of top-notch racing and exciting finishes. Think back all the way to Daytona. That's where it all started, and ever since then we've had drag races, we've had dominating performances, and we've had races like this where it literally comes down to the last lap whether or not a driver can make it. And thank you for having me, Seth. This is great to get back in the booth. It's been a while since we've been to G-Force, but since I've been at G-Force, and glad to be back, and we got a great race out of it.
Well, will Cooper Johnson be taking the points lead into Bristol? If not, the point stands are going to be awfully close between himself, Steinmiller, Whitendorf, and Morse Jr., and it's going to be settling out when we get to Bristol next week. Tomorrow night, we bring you coverage of the second race of the season for the Dark Horse IndyCar Series, their first road course stop at Road America. Green flag will fly there at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you guys will join us for that. For Anthony McCurry, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night as you've been watching another production by the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.